Hi, I am Numan and I am a product engineer at Postman. And today we're going to talk about scripting in Postman. In the previous section, when we talked about API testing, we saw how you can write JavaScript code to implement your tests and how Postman would run this JavaScript just after the response is received. There's one more type of scripting that you can do in Postman, and we run the script before the request is sent out, and we call this pre-request scripts. And these are very useful for doing any kind of setup that is needed for the request, as they are run before the request is sent. Now, along with test script and pre-request script, they form Postman's scripting capabilities. So pre-request script is run before the request is sent out, and the test script is run after the response comes back. Now, all this scripting capability is powered by what we call the Postman Sandbox. Postman Sandbox is a node.js based JavaScript execution environment. So all the test scripts and the prerequisites that you write are executed within the sandbox. And the Postman Sandbox is what enables these powerful dynamic behaviors for your requests and your collections. Now, in the previous section, we already saw how you can use built-in libraries to make some of your testing use cases easier. Now, there are other built-in libraries also within the Postman Sandbox that you can use in your JavaScript code. The main one that I want to talk about is lodash. So this is a set of utility functions that can help you write easier and better reading JavaScript. There's also moment. So if you work with time-based data a lot, this is very helpful. If you use moment, we already saw TV4. This is what that you can use for quick JSON schema validation. If you work with HTML and XML responses a lot, it can get cumbersome to work with these within your JavaScript. So we have provided Cheerio, and you can work well with your XML and HTML responses by using Cheerio. If you work with cryptographically hashed values in your API, you can use crypto.js to encrypt or decrypt certain values. And there are many more. Now, we already saw a small part of the Postman Sandbox API in the previous section when we talked about API testing. There we saw pm.test and pm.response, and these two are just a small part of a set of special variables and functions we provide within this JavaScript that we call the Postman Sandbox API. There are other functions also available on the Postman Sandbox object. So pm.environment is available if you want to read or alter the value of an environment. Similarly, there's pm.global and pm.variables also available. There's a special API available for sending a request from within the JavaScript called pm.sendRequest. We would see that as we go along. If you want access to the request that is currently being sent, you can get access to that via pm.request. There's also pm.info if you want to get information regarding the request. If you're using the collection runner, there's also a special pm.iteration data for you to get access to any data files that was used to run the collection. Now, all this dynamic scripting behavior unlocks a powerful feature within Postman that we call chaining. And you can chain requests to build more powerful scenarios within your collection. And we would cover that as we come along. Now, once you start writing prerequisite scripts and test scripts, you would notice that you might be repeating the same kind of script for multiple requests within this collection. Now, to help you with maintaining those reusable and common scripts, we have exposed scripts at the folder and collection level also. So if you define scripts at the collection level, we would run them for every single request in the collection. And if you define them at the folder level, we would run them for every single request in the folder. So if you have scripts defined in all the levels, which is collection, folder, and at the request level, Postman would execute them in a very specific order. So if you send out a request, we would first execute the pre-request script that is defined at the collection level where this request is saved. And then we would, if the request is within a folder, we would run the pre-request script defined at that folder. And then just before the request is sent out, we will also run the pre-request script that is defined at the request level. Now the request would go out, and after the response comes back, we would run the test scripts in a similar order. We would start with the collection level test script, and then we would go to the folder level test script, and then finally we would execute the request level test script. Alright, so let's see all this in action within the Postman app. So I'm going to continue using the Twitter search API that we used in the previous section where we talked about API testing. Now instead of searching for PostCon 2018, I'm just going to search for any tweets that's talking about Postman using Postman's official Twitter handle. So if I send the request, I see a bunch of tweets that is referencing Postman client. Now what if I don't want any tweets that were sent out in the last 2 days? And I don't want to hard code this date value for this use case. So Twitter API takes a special parameter called until, and here I have to define the date up to which I need the tweets. Now I need to compute this date dynamically each time I send this request. So if I'm sending today, I need the date which was 2 days ago. Now this is a really good use case for using pre-request scripts because we can do all this dynamic setup before the request is sent out. So for now I've set this value to an environment variable, and we would come back and see how to set this environment variable before the request is sent out. So I'm going to the pre-request script section for this request, and because this is a time data, I am going to use the built-in library moment for this use case. So the way you require these built-in modules is by using the require syntax. It's very similar to node.js require. So I'm requiring moment, and then I'm using moment, I'm initializing moment. So when I initialize moment, I get the latest date, which is today, and then I'm asking moment to subtract 2 days so that I get the date 2 days ago. And since this API takes this parameter in a special format, I'm asking moment to format that date in this particular format. So when I run this, I'm going to get 2 days ago date formatted in this particular format stored in this variable. And finally, I'm going to set that variable into this environment variable using the pm.environment.set. Until is the variable name, and 2 days ago is the value that I want to set. So now if I run this again, I can see that I'm not getting any tweets from the last 2 days. And if I go and check the environment, I can see that the dynamically computed value is 2 days ago. Today is the 12th of July, and I got the 10th of July. So this is how you use pre-request script to dynamically compute values and do quick setup before your request is sent out. Now let's talk about pm.sendRequest. So this is a special API that you can use to send another request before the actual request is sent out. So in this hypothetical use case, let's say I want to hit another endpoint, another API, to quickly get an ID value which I want to send in my actual request. So in my actual request, which is sending a request to Postman echo, I am defining the body as a variable UUID, and now I'm going to fetch this UUID value from another endpoint. So the way we do that is by using pm.sendRequest in the pre-request script, and this is an open API that will give us UUID version 4 strings each time I call it. So we call that and we get the response in the callback, and I take the response, I do some cleaning up with the response, and then I set it to the environment. Now if we clean it, if we send it, we can see that we send the special UUID out. Now if I open the Postman console, and if I go back and send this request again, even though we are sending only once, we can see that Postman internally sent out two requests, one to the UUID generator and another one to our actual URL, which is Postman echo. And we took the value that we got from this first API call, and since we used it through an environment, that got set into the request body that was sent out. This is how you use pm.sendRequest to quickly send out another request before your actual request goes out. It's very useful if you want to have any non-standard auth, or if you want to quickly fetch the auth information for the API before the API is called. Now let's talk about chaining. I have a common use case every day, which is where I want to know the weather forecast for today, and I want that to be tweeted at me every day. So we can build this scenario by using chaining within Postman. So to build the scenario, first we need to get the weather information for today, and we will use an API to get that information, and then we would use another Twitter API to actually send a tweet with the weather information. So there's two APIs involved in this scenario. So I'm using the Open Weather Map API to get access to the weather information in SF. So I've already set up my API keys and the city ID for the use case, and if I send this request, I can see that this is the weather information for SF, and I can see the temperature variation that is forecasted for today. Now I need to use this information to form a tweet and then send that value through another API call. So I can use environments as a way to store these values that I can use in the next API call. So I'm going to jump into the test section, and first we would use pm.response.json to parse this JSON response and give us access to the response as a nice JavaScript object for us to work with. And then we would read out the two values that we are looking for, called temperature min and temperature max, and we would do that as response data dot main, which is here, dot temperature min. We would do the same for temperature max. We would store them into local variables, and then finally we would set them into an environment, so as two different environment variables. Now if I send this again, and if you open up, we can see that we have two new environment keys that is created with the values that we got from the API response. So there's 68 and 87.8. Now that we have these values in the environment, we can use these values to form a tweet in the next API call. So in the next API call, this is the API call for me to post a tweet, and I'm just forming the tweet message as today's forecast from low to high. So now if we send this, alright, so it looks like it's a successful tweet. Now if I jump to this account, and we can see that we successfully tweeted the current temperature forecast. Alright, so just before I wind up this section, I want to show you how Postman runs the scripts defined at the collection and the folder level. So if I open this folder and if I edit this folder by clicking on edit from the ellipsis, I can see that there is two more sections, and there is a prerequest script and a test script defined at the folder level. And in these scripts, I'm just doing a console.log. I have a similar script defined at the collection level, where I'm saying it's a collection level prerequest script and a collection level test script. And we also have similar logs at the request level. Now, before I send this request, I'm going to go clear the Postman console. And if we send request 1, and if we go back to the console, we can see that Postman ran all the scripts that's defined at the collection level also, and the folder level also. So first we ran the collection level prerequest script, and that is why the log from that came first. And then we ran the folder level prerequest script, and then the request level prerequest script, and then the request went out, and then we did the same for the test script, where we ran the collection level test script, folder level test script, and request level test script. So it's important to remember this order in which Postman would run these scripts if you have multiple of them. This is also showing how you can do quick debugging within these scripts. The recommended way right now is to do console logging of the values that you want to debug within your scripts, and those console logs will show up in the Postman console. Alright, so to recap, we saw how to write prerequest scripts and do quick setup needed for the request. In our case, we use moment to dynamically compute a date value that was 2 days ago. We also saw how to use pm.sendRequest to send another request from within the script before the actual request is sent out. We saw how to do chaining by using environments as a way to carry forward data. So we hit the weather API, we got the temperature information, then we set those info in the environment, and then we use the environment to send out a tweet in the next API call. So that is chaining. And finally, we saw how Postman can run prerequest scripts and folders level prerequest scripts defined at the collection and the folder level. And this is a good way for you to reuse commonly used prerequest scripts or test scripts. So to summarize, the prerequest script is executed just before the request is sent. The Postman Sandbox is what powers all the scripting behavior within Postman, and this is a node.js based JavaScript environment. You have access to built-in libraries like Moment, Lodash, Crypto.js, and many more. And you also have access to a set of special JavaScript variables and functions that we call Postman Sandbox API. You can debug your scripts by using console logs, and they will show up in the Postman console. And you can use folder and collection level scripts to keep everything dry and not repeat yourself. So before I wind up this session, I want to show you where you can find the documentation for Postman Sandbox API. So if you go to the Postman docs and search for Postman Sandbox API reference, you can find the reference for these special variables and functions that we support within the JavaScript. So you have documentation for pm.sendRequest. We have documentation for how to use pm.environment to read and set values into the environment, and many more. Yep. Thank you.